Okay, so we're good for YouTube and Twitch, and we'll be good for Instagram in a few seconds.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we're live.
So, thank you very much for everybody to be here with us on the panel about Iranian fantasy and science fiction with Marta Vomiero, Armina, and Zoha. And I remind people that you can follow these conferences online now on Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. But you will also be able to re-find the conferences, all the conferences of Confluence, on YouTube and on podcast. We will communicate where on podcast because we are still deciding and working on it. But this is our third conference, and I don't want to take a lot of time speaking. I prefer the interviews to be the center of our conferences. So I'll let Marta present yourself, and then you can
Thank
present
you.
to writers.
Okay, hi, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting us to Confluence's 2025. And also thank you for the organization of this beautiful occasion and this festival, which is a great occasion to connect to other people working in the field of science and speculative fiction. And I'm really happy to be here and to moderate this interview with these two incredible writers who are reshaping the landscape of Iranian science and speculative fiction. And we will see later during the interview, and they will have the occasion to speak for themselves. I'll do just a short introduction of them and of myself. I will start from the writers because I think that they are the real center of this interview. So first of all, I start with Armina. They are a writer, educator, and they define themselves as inclusive storyteller. They had a master degree in mechatronics engineering. That's right, if I'm not mistaken. And then they became writers after a master degree in creative writing at the University of Victoria. And as we will see later, Armina is one of the first writers to introduce the queer topics in Iran. And so their stories open a new field, and these kind of stories give voice to the communities which has been underrepresented so far in that country. Then we have Zoha Kazemi, also a science and speculative fiction author. She has published 17 books so far, and the books are mainly in Persian, but she also writes in English, and her novels are being translated in different languages, including Italian with the Future Fiction Edizioni. We will talk about some of your novels later more in detail. Currently, she is based in Seattle, and she's doing a PhD in English literature, so focusing her research in science fiction and transhumanism. Maybe later she can talk about in more detail about that. And last, I will introduce myself. My name is Marta Vomiero. I studied Persian language and literature at Ca' Foscari University, both at the bachelor and master degree. And then I focused on translation studies at La Sapienza University, where I met Francesco Verso from Future Fiction Edition. And that's how I came across the works of Zoha Kazemi and the translation of few of her short stories. These short stories will be published soon, I hope, in Italy. We are still waiting, but I think it's a matter of weeks, months, I don't know. So again, I'm really glad to be there today, and I will start with some questions. So we'll give the word to the authors themselves. And I start with more general questions, and then we will go more into more personal questions. So I will start from the general Iranian scenario linked to the science fiction cultural current. Like, how is science fiction perceived in Iran today? And if you want, you can tell us more about the cultural scene in general. I don't know. Let's start with Armina, if you agree. Oh, I think that we cannot hear you. Maybe the mic is not. Okay, so Armina, we give you the time to fix. Maybe Zoha, you can start.
So yeah, science fiction is not. First of all, I want to say hello and thank you for the confluences. I forgot to say this. It's really good to have these conversations about works of science fiction that are being written all around the world, and I found this to be very effective and very important, especially right now. Iranian science fiction. We've always been introduced to science fictions, since many years ago. Most of the golden writers of science fiction, Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, they were all published and in Iran translated and published, and we're quite up to date in the realm of translation. So there's a lot of translation coming into Iran, especially from Western countries. Not that many from Eastern countries or from Asian or even neighboring countries, and I think that's a shame. But the focus is mostly on award-winning works of fiction that are published outside, and especially English language works, because it's much easier to translate them, translate from English to Persian. So we always have a lot of books that are translated and published in Iran. And about Persian writing or Iranian science fiction, it's still a new thing. So it's still a new movement that's happening. It's been going around, I could say 10, 15 years now that we have like serious writers dedicating themselves to writing science fiction and fantasy and horror in Iran. This is not something we had before, not as organized as we have today. But we also have like new publishers that have started working in the last decade, and are dedicating themselves to publishing science fiction, both translation and Iranian science fiction. So that's a big step that was taken. And we also have awards now, like special awards for science fiction, because when a work of science fiction gets into a literary award, there's no chance that this book is going to be picked up by the referees, or that they would be honored or even read. I mean, they're going to dismiss the work immediately, saying that this is not literary fiction. So in the last 10 years, we've also had contests and awards. Contests are usually for unpublished authors, and I think it's one of the best ways of promoting science fiction, through inviting people to write in the genre, try their hands in writing this genre, and being recognized and finding a path forward to publish their books later on. So we now have awards, we have publishers, we have contests, and we also have readers. I'm gonna let Armina explain about the readers if she wants to, because it's the fan bases are very unique, and they're really nice. So yeah.
Sure, Armina, if you want to connect to Zoha's answer, go for it.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I want to thank everyone for having me here. It's super exciting. In terms of fans and readers, like all the thing that Zoha said about the general public, like as in, I don't know, my parents and like the other generation, it might be true, but the thing is, the like young audience, maybe young readers started to embrace the fact that we do actually have like good native science fiction writer. They are starting to accept, okay, here's the thing, if you are not a man, or if you have a Persian name like that, and if they see that, like usually if people see that on a book, they are like, oh, that can't be a good science fiction, for some reason. I don't know why. But now, like from my experience and from like the interactions that I've been having with my readers, and what Zoha gracefully mentioned as like fan base, is that they are starting to accept, they are starting to giving us a chance, maybe, that okay, let's try this out. If I didn't like it, I'm not going to read like any more of this writer. But also the fact that we have like several writers, we have dedicated authors who are working in this genre, makes it sort of possible for the reader to kind of pick their own, like go with their own like taste. If they don't like, for example, this is not only Armina now today. There is Armina, there is Zoha, there is Elisa, there are a lot of people. So if I don't like Armina's work, it doesn't mean that I can't read Iranian science fiction. I can go with others. And
it's a real movement today.
Yeah,
it's growing as a real movement.
Yeah, exactly. So it hasn't been always easy. I assume Zoha's journey has been like more eventful in comparison to someone like me who came in like later. And basically I'm enjoying like Zoha's work fruits for now. But yeah, it hasn't been like always well received, especially as I said, if they say like a Persian name, they are like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna like it. Or if they see specifically, if they see not like a traditional, like not a male name, not a man's name on the book, they assume, oh, it's gonna be a love story or something. So it's like there has been like a lot of assumptions, and now I think it's going better. I think that is like my perception.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. It's always interesting to see how, from an external point of view, this kind of literature is perceived. For example, I live in Italy, so in a Western country, and it appears that if a story is not dramatic or shows poor people or something about war, about really bad things happening to people, it's not worth the reading. But in fact, there is a lot of movement, like science fiction, but also other literary genres that are growing. And yes, and I hope that also in the Western country we will see and we will start to consider it as like real literature as much as the other genres and other stories. And also, what about Iranian literature? During my studies, I've always seen how Iranian people have a strong connection with their classicals, so the classical literary tradition. And of course, from an external point of view, I could see science fiction as a break from the tradition. Do you agree with that, or do you see science fiction more as a continuation of the literary tradition, or the contrary, is a break? Yes, a break point from the classical literature. If I don't know, whoever of you wants to start to the answer. Okay, go on, Zoha.
Yeah, so you studied Persian literature. You know that we have this beautiful and rich literature that dates back like many centuries ago. Like we have famous poets, and their works are still being read by people today, and they are loved. And we take proud in our, like I always say, like Persian people take proud in some things. One of them is their poets, it's their food, it's probably their Persian cats or carpets and art. But Persian poetry is one of the things that we actually do take pride in, because it's well, their works are fascinating. But Persian fiction is actually quite new. So it like fiction writing started around 1940s with works of Sadegh Hidayat, and then later on by other writers that came into play. And it's mostly based on social realism. Not Sadegh Hidayat himself. Sadegh Hidayat actually wrote science fiction and fantasy without, I don't know if he was aware he's doing science fiction, but he does have some short stories that are considered sci-fi, some short stories that are considered weird fiction, some surrealism. He also has like fantasy works. Maybe you've read them. But after that, mostly because of what happens in the country, and then we have the revolution, and then after the revolution, and as you said, like social realism becomes very strong. And if you're not writing about that, and you're not writing anything serious. But then eventually some other kinds of fiction started developing in Iran. One of them was romance writing. And romance writing, even though it's some people dismiss it as escape literature or I don't know, commercial fiction, it did play a very important role in Persian fiction, because it started having its own kind of industry of women writers, women publishers, women readers, and they're actually making money from their publications. So they introduced a new way of doing working with fiction without being completely in line with the previous social realism. And then I personally see science fiction as a break from traditions, because traditional social realism, it's mostly sort of reactionary kind of writing. So you're reacting to everything that's happening and you're criticizing everything that's happening and all the problems. You're trying to reflect them in your writing, and you try to criticize so many things. And it's all about the past. It's all about the past and the present. But when we go to science fiction, we need to, let's start imagining what's going to happen further down the line, what's going to happen in the future. We start speculating. And then that's something that we never had before as a kind of serious way of writing. So I do see it as a break, and it's part of becoming, Iran is being in communication with other countries now. We have more people who are educated, and we have even more people who know other languages rather than Farsi. We have internet, we have social media, we have access to movies and TV series, and even books like audiobooks, all kinds of all kinds of publications that happen outside the country. And because we don't have copyright rules, we access them very easily and immediately. So the exposure has brought us even closer to the world. And because of so many things that happen in Iran, so many censorship and like red lines, there's also a sort of people wanting to break free from the previous traditional sense of writing and reading. So I think all of this was helpful in making us move forward. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. And Armina, if you want to add something.
It's so tough to answer after Zoha, since she covers like everything so beautifully and so like completely. Yeah, I have like maybe one or two things to add to that. The fact that like Zoha also mentioned that this is the work of science fiction. This is what science fiction has to offer. That what can be, what might be, what are the possibilities, what's going to happen, like all that, like break all that, like sort of liberation that science fiction offers. And I feel like after like revolution, after we were kind of cut off from like literature, like kind of goes forward, and it like goes its own way. But like up until the revolution, I have a feeling that Iranian literature and like the rest of the world literature, we were like going side by side. After that, there was like a cut, and it was all about like, it became sort of like, it's kind of isolated. It's been kind of isolated. And then science fiction, speculative fiction, even like some fantasy fictions, they come along and they are like, okay, let's catch up. Look what we have to offer. Here's the liberation. Here's the future. Here's like what's happening, what can happen. And like, I don't say it as like a continuous work. I say it as a sort of like a very much needed addition to the whole literature that we used to have before that. And maybe that is why it's not like super like taken seriously, because people are like, oh, this is not like anything we like, our ancestors were reading this. It's not like serious literature, because they are not used to it. They hadn't been used to it. Maybe we are more used to it nowadays.
Yes, we will see in the next few years how it will change maybe, and I think that with the passing of time, people will become more used to new form of literature too. Or at least this is my hope, because it can give a great expressing, great power of expression. And about that, I wanted also to ask you if you can see science fiction as a kind of literary refugee to speak with a wider freedom about certain particular topics that may be difficult to talk about, especially in a country where there is the control on what is published, like Iran. If you want to start, Armina, this time, so
yeah, I wasn't complaining. I love that Zoha was giving like all the right answer, all the like super professional answers, and then I was like, hey, I like writing science fiction. So yeah, just so that you know, I wasn't complaining. So yeah, the thing that you mentioned is like absolutely true, because like I am speaking freely because I'm out of the country. I'm not gonna go back to the country, so
okay.
I'm quite free in like chatting about that. I just published the first book in my series, Design Agency. That is like sort of an international science fiction, within which we have like very strong queer representation, and it's like 800 years from now. So within that book, I could address all the homophobia, all the like queer phobia, all the education that we might not have access to freely in my country, using that setting, using it's like 800 years from now, it's not even in our country, so it's gonna be okay. It doesn't like it's not what you think it is. So when you work under like such strong and difficult like censorship, you find your ways around the system. You gotta do something about that. And so yeah, that is what you do. This is what you use. Like you use science fiction, you use fantasy to reclaim the narrative and still be able to reach your audience in like who are like within that system. You need to kind of talk to those young audience who had like nothing, so they can't reach, like they can't access the more how can I put it, more like a media that is like not censored, a media that is more inclusive. So what they have, maybe sadly for them, what they have is like me writing a queer story, and I need to get it to them, whatever means necessary. So science fiction is absolutely, at least for me, is something that you can use that to reclaim the narrative, to challenge the censorship, to challenge the system, because it gives you like so many options, so many opportunities to go 100 years from now, like write an alternate reality, write an alternate like timeline, something like that wouldn't like raise alarms where you don't want them to, but also educate people, but also provide a break, provide a sanctuary, I'd say, for people who need that. So yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I think this is why we need science fiction in the first place. We need fantasy in the first place, to, once again, to break free and to challenge, to reclaim the narrative. So yeah, absolutely. But Zoha also can tell you more about, because like her works are more on the like hard science fiction side. So I assume that she has like tons of experience. I know nothing. So she might be able to tell you more about her experience.
Also, I forgot to mention before that currently Zoha is living abroad, but you used to live and to work in Iran, isn't it?
Yeah.
So can you tell about your experience, maybe when you were living in Iran?
Yeah. So I came to Seattle about a year ago, and I'm just here as a student. So I'm temporarily here. I have to go back at one point. So yeah, it's not about being necessarily on the safe side of things. I've been talking about censorship back in Iran also, so it's not something that we can talk about it, and then you have to pay the consequences. So two different things. I want to tell you what are some of the things that are on the red line, if you're interested. Many people talk about what is being censored in literature in Iran. Is that something you want to know? I can give you a list of categories. First of all, we cannot directly criticize the government. That's obviously not something anyone can do, whether it's in fiction, whether it's in their social media, or whether it's like journalism. You cannot directly criticize any figure or anything about the government. So that makes the work of social realism pretty much really hard. It's not something you can do easily in your book. As Armina said, queer fiction, anything about gay, lesbian, transgender, all of these things are forbidden. Again, we have you cannot have anything suggestion any sexual or this kind of things in your book. So you cannot have a sex scene, you cannot even have a kiss in your story. So men and women, they have to you can't even have a male and a woman character inside a room just being alone with each other. I mean, it could suggest some kind of sexual thing afterwards. Yeah. we do put them in our works, and they get by, but to be honest, that's not even allowed. Even having dogs inside houses is something that's going to be censored. So you cannot have a dog inside a house, because dogs are not, dog walking or having a dog as a pet in your book, it's not something you can have. Another thing that's really important is that you cannot criticize any kind of religion in books, especially Islam. So there is no way you can talk about, you cannot ask any religious questions, no religious questions, no political questions, no sexual scenes, nothing. These are all part of the things that are not allowed in our writing. As I said, not just in fiction, in social media, in many other things. History is another thing. You cannot write about certain times, certain aspects of history, because it's going to bring up more questions, more political and social questions. I know some writers that have been writing social realism stories about war, the Iran-Iraq war, and they cannot publish anymore. Even that's out of the question. You cannot question the Islamic Revolution. You cannot even write about that without having their consent. So there are so many red lines. So what are we going to write about? when you bring all of these things together, you cannot write about prices going high. You cannot write about education system because that's going to be directly questioning the government. You cannot do this and that. So there's a lot of limitations. What science fiction offers us, it's you can use you can bring in a novum, a sort of break from reality, from the empirical world setting of the writer. You can change the whole world, have your own self-sufficient world building, and then through that you have a new world. It's just imaginary. It's not real. It's not questioning anyone. It's not criticizing anyone. It's a whole new world building. It's so in that light you can ask your questions. You can speculate about different aspects of history. You can criticize different kinds of ideologies and ask questions about religious fundamentalism or stuff like that, and bring into light some of the things that are bothering you, or you think that it might be an important topic for your readers to consider and to rethink through your imagination. So yes, of course, fantasy and science fiction can be liberating. They can offer you a sort of estranged world that you can use that defamiliarization device to create a whole new world, and then talk about fundamental topics and themes in the story without getting caught. But then again, you cannot have explicit sex scenes even in a science fiction work. So that's one thing.
Can I add something funny to that, to what Zoha
Sure.
just said?
Some gossip about.
Yeah. So I just mentioned my super strong queer representative, like sort of book, Design Agency. It has like the protagonist is like gay, and the whole like story basically is a love story in that like universe. And they like, he got married, he has like his own kisses, he has like his own time with his lover and everything, and they are like both male and everything. Here's what got censored from book 2, is that the same gay person who's been like all along the story, like acting and like being the main person, was kissing his daughter. And that is what they asked. Like it went to like the like they were like, oh, okay, so you cannot have a man kiss a woman. And we were like, oh, it's his daughter. And they were like, no kisses. I was like, you know that he's gay, right? But yeah, that kissing his daughter got censored, but he's still there. Like the gay guy is still there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a funny story about like the censorship. Okay, I want to connect to your answers, and like I think we are more or less at the turning point of this interview, so we can switch to more personal questions about your works. So I'll ask you a question about your personal history connected to science fiction. So I wanted to ask what brought you to science fiction, maybe first as a reader and then as a writer. So what interested you at first place? Let's go with Zoha this time.
Okay. So yeah, I was always a science fiction fan since I was a child. I was fascinated by the wild imagination that you can read in science fiction stories, and I was always a fan. I was a fan of Star Wars since I was a small child, and then eventually, I used to read all kinds of fiction, but that stayed more with me, like science fiction, the liberating feeling that Armina was just talking about, and that that kind of imagination that you can think about what's going to happen in the future, and maybe there's just one thing that could save us all, that maybe there's going to be some good thing at the end, and that kind of thinking was really sat with me. But when I started writing, I started writing social realism like everybody else, and I started writing after the Green Movement. I could say exactly at the time. So I started journaling the Green Movement, and my first book does have actual dates of the Green Movement. If you read the book, you can see that. But I started writing, and I published like 2-3 books, trying to get, trying to reflect some of the things that were happening around me, especially things about women and oppression and stuff like that. But it wasn't enough, and I didn't have anyone to look up to when it came to science fiction. So we didn't have anyone writing science fiction novels in Iran. What did that even mean? How could that even be? We don't have the luxury of future imagination in my country. It's not something you have. It's not something, you don't have enough time, and you don't have you have so much worries that you don't sit and think about what's going to happen tomorrow, or a week later, or a few years from now, or even 100 years from now. That's not something that happens back in Iran. So but then again, I wasn't satisfied. I felt like we are all like the new writers of my generation. We were just copying, and we were just repeating what everyone else was doing before us. And I really felt the need for that break, both as a writer and as a reader. So I started writing speculative, like science fiction short stories. And I remember reading one of them it was a story reading. All the young writers were there, and they were all mad at me, and they even insulted me for writing a science fiction short story. And they said, "Who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing? This is nonsense." And I was really badly attacked. And after that, I came home and I thought to myself, what does this attack mean? Maybe I actually did something. Maybe I actually did something different, and that's what offended them. Because the story was not offensive in any way. It was a good story. And then I turned that into Pine Dead later on. So I turned that into a whole novel. And then I talked to some of my older writer friends and teachers at the time, and they said, "Well, you have the education. You've been doing your master's degree in science fiction. You've been reading a lot of science fiction. You know how to write now, and maybe you can. If you don't try this, no one else is going to. It's a really big sort of career risk and a career suicide." They told me that it's going to be very, very hard for you. If you don't succeed, you're going to lose everything, as a writer. I thought to myself, well, this is my only chance of doing something that's different. It's going to cost me a lot, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I started writing my first science fiction novel, which was Pine Dead. And when the book came out, the first reaction was, why do we have Persian names in the book? Just as Armina said, why do we have Persian characters? And then they gave it some time, and they let it sink. And then it was like, wow, you did actually bring in the Islamic Revolution and the war, and you brought everything like our modern history into your science fiction story without, directly, talking about all of these things. It's not that implicit, but it's not that explicit, but you have actually brought everything in, and you have talked about some of the side effects of this and that, and you have asked many questions, and it's actually an interesting story. So it wasn't that successful as the story until COVID breakout, because the story is about a sort of pandemic that happens in the country. Yeah. So, and then, wow, there was a lot of attention to the book. And then in the meantime, I did not sit back and think about, okay, I'm gonna find out what the readers liked about the book, or they didn't, if it was well received or not. I'm just gonna continue writing. I cannot showcase science fiction with just one novel. It's not that's not gonna work. So I started writing without paying attention to any reviews. I started writing Humanoid, and then I wrote The Covering Dust, which is a science fiction, which is a historical fantasy. I'm going to talk more about that. And then I started writing, and then eventually I saw that there were like horror writers that were doing more work. They started publishing, and because my book was somehow received, I'm not saying well received, but it was not dismissed, and that was a good sign. they could not, just dismiss it because it's Persian science fiction. That didn't happen. It was professional. But the rhetoric and language was what was good enough, was literary enough for them to pay some attention to it. And then eventually everyone came together. Like, there were more writers, there were more publishers that shown interest, and we started paving this path that, well, yeah, it is possible to write science fiction that happens in Iran. You don't have to mention all the names. You don't have to have some direct connection to the country, but you can somehow symbolically, metaphorically bring it all into a work of science fiction, and it works. That was one way of doing it. And then I started figuring out different ways of localizing science fiction. If that's something you want to talk about, we can also discuss that. So that's been my journey so far, and I'm still writing. I'm still writing. I'm trying different kinds of subgenres. As you know, science fiction has so many subgenres. Like I don't know, subgenres, more than 36. That's definitely. So I'm trying to write at least. Trying to see which ones work and whether I can bring them into bring that subgenre into Persian settings, and there are more writers working. If in fantasy we did have some greater breakthroughs, because it could actually connect to our previous traditional writing, like Shahnameh. Shahnameh has influenced a lot of writing, a lot of fantasy writing in Iran. So their works were much, I'm not saying easier, but at least they had some references that they could connect to, and they had something that they could build upon. In sci-fi, it was difficult in the sense that we didn't have any predecessors in this convention. Yeah.
And about subgenres, is there any subgenre that you prefer, that you feel more comfortable about, or you're just experimenting and seeing what works best?
Yeah, of course, dystopia and utopia work best. It's I think it's the first to go to when you're writing about Persian, when you're writing in Persian context, in Iranian setting, because it's much closer to home. And you can much more easily see the references and how it's relevant to our lives. But I'm saying that other subgenres can also be very fitting for us. I have been writing in most of the settings turn out to be dystopias, because it comes from our own personal experience of living back in Iran. I think Armina gets what I'm saying. It's very close to home, yeah. But then again, some time travel can work. I'm saying that there are so many other subgenres. As long as they're on Earth, it's much easier to make them Persian and Iranian. But when you get out of the Earth, out of the solar system, probably it's going to be harder to connect that to a specific culture or setting. But then again, many of them actually do work. I have written in most of these subgenres. Like, I have a character on Mars. I have a story that takes place in a generation ship. I have recently I've even written a zombie story that takes place in Tehran. So yeah, I think so many subgenres do actually work for us, and it's just a way of being experienced enough and learning through writing and reading, and see how you can actually connect these subgenres to our cultural references. And you'll because it's a new culture, and then you have the old convention of the genre. When you mix them up together, you'll immediately have a sort of new and fresh kind of story.
Yes, thanks. And one last question before moving to Armina. Can you repeat again the title of your first novel? Maybe the audience is interested in the book.
The book in Persian is called Kajzadegi. It's been translated to Pine Dead. Like, I don't know why Pine Dead, but an award that was given to the book translated the title as Pine Dead. So it's pine poisoning or pine dead. Some people translate it in different ways.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go with Armina. If you want to talk us about your path that led you to science fiction, and also if you want to add something about subgenres and what you feel most comfortable about writing.
Yeah, I've been listening to Zoha, and it was like super interesting how everyone's like every writer's journey can be so different, even though we are like basically like in the same genre, even though we are mainly like interested in same subgenre. My journey was like it's funny because I've been more of a like fantasy fan when I was a young reader, and I've been always fascinated by all of those like alternate realities, all of those like alternate possibilities, like magic and everything. But since my journey was like more inward, I'd say more personal, and I've been like in the process of discovering myself as a person. I turned to science fiction when I started writing because here's the thing: when you grow up queer in a place that like the president says, oh, we don't have like any homosexuals or something, it means that you are unlike anybody else around you. You are unnatural, you are weird, you don't belong, basically. So science fiction for me, when I started writing science fiction, first it was a thing that, hey, this is possible. This is like, that is the thing, that is the difference I believe science fiction has, like with something like fantasy, that we are talking about possibility. We are talking about, oh, it can be. You don't know, maybe there is like a hidden rule, maybe you don't know like how to use it yet, but there are like this like all of these possibilities, all of these opportunities, all of these like all of this like even bright future that you don't know about it yet. So for me it was like going into that sanctuary of like books and all that like alternate realities that I experience as a reader, and then bring it to my audience as in, you are not alone. Like, because I was exploring my identity, and I was like, oh, am I the only one who feels like this? Am I the only one who like who's experiencing this burden of being, and am I the only one of my own kind? And then writing it into science fiction was for me that, hey, come in, if you are like me, come in. It was to soothe the young Armina, who were like, oh, I don't belong, this is not my world, this is not how I feel estranged from everyone else. And trying to also get other young ones like me into this sanctuary that, come in, you are not weird, you are not unnatural, we are here, and we existed long before we are existing now, and we are going to exist like long after everything. So for me, again, I started my first book, Call of Color, like the first series, Final Quartet. It was mainly about you are not that strange, you are not that like weird, or you are weird in the most beautiful way, and you belong somewhere, you belong to this, I don't know, small island with all of those like colors, all of those superpowers. It's a superpower of you. It's a superpower that you have, that you feel differently, and that is okay. There are other people who feel differently. There are other people who sense things in a different way. So basically, I'd say like my journey as a writer has been more finding that sanctuary, and then inviting people over, and saying that, hey, this is possible, we are here, come in, you are part of us, you are one of us. And so not only me belonging to that community, but also that community, everyone in that community belongs with me, come in. So yeah, it was a like totally different journey from Zoa's, but that's the interesting part about writing and books, that everyone's journey is very different, very unique, beautifully unique, but unique.
Yes, thank you. That's very fascinating. Also, listening to such different stories that brought you to a similar end or similar path. And since you mentioned your last, I think it's your latest novel, The Final Quartet, and is it not?
The final quartet is my first series. The last one is Design Agency. So
okay, sorry. And if you want to go more in depth with that book, if you want to say something more about it, about the content, but also about how it was perceived, as we said before, maybe talking about queerness and queerness coming from an Iranian author can have been perceived as something strange, something weird, and I don't know. Can you tell them something more about that, if you
yeah, so the fan base that Zoha mentioned, like in the beginning, it's I take pride in being like that person for many of like young people who belong to that community. I take pride that I would be their writer, and I haven't seen, like, growing up, I haven't seen any queer literature. I hadn't seen anything that resembles like me, or the type of, I don't know, the type of relationship that I'm having, or the type of family that I'm hoping to have one day. So basically in the design agency, which again, I take pride in having that, like all of that representation, queer, or like we have autistic people, we have a lot of like representation from all types of, and it's sort of international, so all type of ethnicities, everything. So in that we have, as I mentioned, a gay protagonist. It's a super futuristic world, but it's still very homophobic, because humankind is about to get extinct, so they care a lot about reproduction, and they care a lot about people who'd be able to offer that, and they are very, it's mainly like Iran in terms of how they perceive queerness. And also it's also a sort of a matriarchal society, so that we can argue that, do you see how this argument is stupid? When they say like, oh, women can give birth, so they are the superior sex, or something like that. Do you see how stupid it is? So the other way around, when you look at it from outside, is still like stupid. So yeah, the setting of the society, that being homophobic and that being matriarchal, and like working against like what we see right now, so that people would understand how not correct their arguments are. Helped me with the protagonist, who's a gay guy who's trying to figure out his way around the world. And well, the fun part, I guess, is that it's about a sort of like assassination agency. So that person is trying to survive. He's coming from a broken house, so he's trying to survive that place, and also he tried to survive this like sort of agency that he got into. And that's the story afterward. As I mentioned, like, the story is about hope and fighting, even if all the odds are like working against you, everything's against you. So that's mainly the story. And I always said, like, to my friends, to the audience, like to the readers who are like kind of following me on my Instagram page, that this is the story about us. This is the story about how we are trying to find our place. This is the story about how we are fighting the system, and how we are able to turn the tables. We are able to, we can get through this. We can come out victorious. But this is your inspiration. This is what I come up with, that there is going to be like a lot of bad things happening. It's quite dark for like, I don't know, 90% of the work, and when 90% of the series is quite dark. And then you see like, oh, we can do this. If he can face everything, and he can find his family, he can, as I mentioned, have his own, he can have his own daughters, he can marry the guy he loves, everything. I can do that too, even though our situation is pretty much the same. It's very intense. It's not a friendly world for us. If you're queer, and if you're not a man, and if you're Middle Eastern, everything together, we are like super super like oppressed in any way, like any marginalized category that you mentioned, I belong to. So that is basically the story, that, hey, come in, look at this guy, he's going to go through so much, but look at his story and read the story and see that he did it, he can do it, and he's trying, like, even though he has no hopes. So maybe you can try too. Maybe there's a hope for us after all. So it's a dark story about hope and love, I'd say. And I love that it's about us. It's about Middle Eastern Iranian queer people, basically.
Wow, sounds great. Thank you for your answer. And I go back to Zoha, and I wanted to ask you something about a book that you actually mentioned before. And what I found interesting about that book is that in the following the stereotype of speculative and science fiction, is that it should be always linked to future time. But you wrote, as you said, a historical fantasy novel covering dust. And can you tell us more about the book in general? What is it about, and why you choose to set it in the Elamite era, which is about 3,000 to 5,000 years ago?
So I'm always fascinated by history, and how, in a way, we don't learn from history, and how we repeat our mistakes over and over again. I mean, if we were actually able to, if people actually would spend some time and review what's happened in the past, maybe that would save us from a lot of troubles that's going to happen in the future. So the covering dust, the theme came from something that I really wanted to explore, if I was able to, social realism context, but I wasn't able to. So it's actually about defying gods and religious compliance, and whether systemic religious constitutes can actually oppress us and shape us into being compliant citizens and do this and that. So and it was very risky to write about any religion that exists today. So I thought about, well, I can write about this again in Iran, but maybe I can go, instead of going into the future and creating a religion that doesn't exist yet, like Frank Herbert does in Dune, or many other writers do. They created a new set of religions in the future. That's quite. I've done that also in Rainbow and some other stories. But for this one, I really wanted to go back to the roots and say, where does the problem come from? We've been repeating the same mistakes. So I had to go back to a time where we didn't have like a single god religion, so like Zoroastrian, before Zoroastrian era. And I started reading about different historical eras in Iran. And I was fascinated that we have so little fiction produced about the Elamite era. We have so little even academic books and research done about that time. What did people do at that time? What was the religion really about? Because they had so many different gods, like for everything, for every natural thing, they had a god, like a god for rivers, a god for mountains, a god for this and that. And I had been visiting. I'm trying to remember the names in English now. So I went down to south of Iran to visit the Chagazambil, the ziggurat. I don't know what that's called in English right now. And I've been down there. I've been visiting that place, those places many times, and I thought about setting my story in that time and in that era and in that location. So, and I had to go back again, do more research, like field research, and see what are some of the things that the land actually provide me for the setting. And it was fascinating. Like there's a mountain in Hormuz that when you go, because there's gas under the mountain, if you just remove the soil and you light it up, you get flames, and it's called like a flame mountain, and it's real. I've been there. I have pictures there. It's fascinating, and that has been there for so many years. Like how more magical can you get? I mean, this is magic in its own. I mean, you don't have to come up with magical theories and magical systems just to create something. You already have that kind of magic in our land, in our history. So that actually sparked something in me, and it's part of the magic system in the story, and it provides that land, that kind of soil provides immortality for people. Like when you die and you're buried there, you can wake up the next morning and you're born anew and you're going to be immortal. So some of the themes that I actually work with are immortality in that book. It's about religion and religious compliance. It's about love. It's really about love, I think. And I think, again, love is one of the most magical things that we have as human beings. And the more I'm studying like transhumanism, I see that, well, the only thing that actually is very you can't really define what love is and how it works. It's very weird and it's very beautiful. So all of these things came together, and I came up with the plot and the characters. One of the things that was really hard at the time was bringing the names, like the Elamite names. So at the time, for example, they didn't have like single first name, second name, or first middle name and last name. The names were like, this is, for example, Amatna, the girl whose womb is dedicated to this god, like to the god of Pinikir or some other god. So the names were like this. They came with dedications, who this person belonged to, and it was very fascinating, that part. And the names are very difficult to write and pronounce. So I had to find a system to, in a way, modernize some of the words, some of the names of that time. And I did an extensive research on the era. I don't know how many books I read. And another difficult thing was that because their language was not really understood at the time, and they discovered what the words meant after they were able to find some writings, some writings from Babel and Sumer, and they were able to look at all these texts together, and then eventually figure out what the Elamite language was about and what they said. So we don't have any correct pronunciation of words. Like each researcher writes the names differently. One of them, for example, we have a temple for the sun, and it's called Nahont or Nahonte or Nahont. So each one of them give you a different kind of pronunciation. And I was thinking, so which am I going to use? Which one is the right one? And then I decided to go with the most easiest and more modern assimilate of the word. So the book does have a lot of rituals and events and ceremonies from that time, a lot of religious ceremonies of the time, many different settings, and it also comes with a sort of fantasy plot, and it's about like immortality and the magic that lands provide you with. So this land can provide you with immortality, as it has done, for example, in our literature. Like it seems to be like our literature has been continuous in time from many centuries before, and it's still going on. But then again, what do we do with this immortality? What are we doing with all the gift and all the richness that is provided for us? Are we doing this? Are we using this the proper way? Some other people also talked about like the gift of immortality, maybe pointing out to oil and like natural resources. It wasn't my intention at the time, but it could be any kind of richness, any kind of gift that the land, that your motherland or your nature is giving you, and what you're doing with it. Are you taking advantage of that for more power? Are you using that for something good? Does that become source of happiness, or does it become more calamities, as you go on? So
Sure, that's incredible how often the interpretation of the readers goes beyond the intention of the writer and gives a wider interpretation. And thank you, Zoha, for your answer. I wanted to go to the conclusion of our interview, and since we are talking about speculative fiction, I wanted also to speculate a bit with you. And our last question would be that if you could meet an author of science fiction or even a character from any science fiction novel, any subgenre, any era, any period of that cultural movement, who would it be, and what would you say to them? Whoever wants to start, maybe it's a creative answer to give, but who is ready for the answer? Armina, maybe? Or
I think my answer is not like that bright. I'd like to meet Susan Collins, the writer of Hunger Games series, and that is like my favorite science fiction series, as this is like it's so like my country, and I want to ask her if she knows, like, do you know that what you described actually exists? Like, do you know that what you're writing is like based on my reality? What you call science fiction is based on a reality, and I can't even tell you like which district is where and like which character is doing what, and I can give you representation like of actual people. I'd like to chat. I'd love to chat with her and be like, hey, so that you know, we exist here, and I am very curious to know like how you, with not knowingly, came up with this story, with this setting, which is very, very realistic, sort of, for us, sadly. And I'd like to have a chat with someone whose mind works that way, because like it shows that they might have like some understanding of the situation, and you'd love to meet with people who think something is like so dark and so unrealistic that is like science fiction is like a dystopian sort of thing. But then I'd like to watch their face when I tell them, oh, that happens on a daily basis in my country. So yeah, that would be my answer, Susan Collins.
thank you. And what about you, Zoha?
I guess I'm very homesick right now, so I would like to see some of my, peers like Behzad Qadimi and some other writers back home. They're writing speculative fiction, and we've had some great chats and talks about like what what we should do and how to do this and that and how to move forward. And I really miss that. But also, I really like. I've been reading a lot from Greg Egan in the last year, and I found his writing very amazing, especially the far future ones like Diaspora and Permutation City. And I would really like to talk to him about ask some of my questions about transhumanism and see how my research can go on at this point. So. Yeah, I think, and as you know, Greg Egan has never been seen. There's no pictures of him. No one's ever seen him actually in his, I don't know. So if he can hear me for some reason, which I doubt, but I just wanted him to know that I'm reading his works and I find them really fascinating. And personally, as an Iranian speculative fiction, I'm very grateful for his novel Zendegi, which takes place in near future Iran, where everything has become a sort of utopia, and like all our social problems are solved now, and we're working towards like creating some kind of simulacrum, virtual games. And what he does in representing Shahnameh stories is very interesting. Like Shahnameh stories in a transhumanist, like virtual reality kind of context, it's actually very interesting.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, both of you. And I don't know if Davide, there are some questions from the audience.
Yeah, we do have one question from the audience, and I do have one question myself. So the first one would be from the audience. Can you recommend some Iranian science fiction and fantasy works that are inspired by the Persian literary canon, folklore? The question, I would say, I don't know if the person speaks Persian, but I think it would be like available. That's my second question. What's available in other languages for other, I mean, people that are following us are not only Persian speakers, so would like also to know what's available in English or in French or in Italian. I know that something will be available in Italian. In French, unfortunately, I can say there's not much. We're working on it. But in English, for example, that's the main lingua franca for now. So, have you been translated, for example? Or do you write in English? That's my question. My two questions, one from the public and one myself, which are interconnected. Yes.
Yeah, I have 3 books that are translated into English. One of them is Year of the Tree. It's not science fiction, but it's one of some of my fans say it's my best book. I have fans that have read it over and over again, and they really like it. It's more like magic realism rather than science fiction. Rainborn is also available in English. It's available in Bengali, and the English is temporarily out of publication, but it's going to be published again soon. And it's also up for some other languages in the future. And I have Time Rider, which is a collection of my short stories. It's available in English. It's also going to be published in Bengali. It's going to be published in Italian. And I have some, scattered science fiction short stories on the internet. If you're looking for some, there are some on Baladi magazine that you can easily access. One of them is like, I only published that in Baladi, so it's like it's never been published before. It's called The Silk Road Embrace. It's about a virtual reality that connects Iran, China, and Canada, and it's all about. It's a bit long, and it's very like romance and virtual reality, something like that. And again, history comes into play again, like what connects us, our cultures and histories. But about other works of science fiction by other writers, I personally don't know. I haven't seen anything being considered or translated, and I really wish there would be. I saw that that there's a book that came out a few weeks ago. It was called Iran Plus 100. Yeah, but most of the writers, except for Berzat Ademi, most of the other writers are literary writers. I have no idea why they have shown this interest of, writing speculative fiction all of a sudden, since they have been condemning us and ignoring us all these years. I can actually name names if you want, because they've been not only they've been passive towards speculative fiction, they've been trying their best to just destroy the whole movement. And suddenly you see that when there's a Iran plus 100, you see their names on the cover. So I haven't read the book. I have no idea what it's about. But as for I would say loyal sci-fi authors that have dedicated their lives to doing this, so far we haven't seen that many publications and translations. And it's because it's really hard to find someone who can translate from Persian to other languages. It's very difficult to find that. And for the world to be interested in our fiction, I mean, the world is not interested to know too much about what's happening outside of the political news that's going on. And the political news is bad news. It's always bad news. When it comes to Iran, it's even worse. So most people try to avoid the whole thing altogether. Okay, we will do that later. It's not a good time. It's best to leave it, maybe later. Okay, let's do other countries. Of course, other countries may be more favorable. There are friends, there are neighbors. We have good connections with them. But with Iran, well, they're very problematic, and it's very difficult to, in a way, like we are independent writers, and it's very difficult for people to be able to separate us from the government. So we are also trying to fight back. We're also trying to find, keep our voice alive, and it's very hard. And for us, as long as we are not completely thrown out of the publishing industry in Iran, it's still a good thing. So we can't complain about anything as long as we're still getting published, and they haven't censored us as much. They haven't banned us as they've done most of the literary works. We're okay. We're still doing fine. We can't complain about not getting translated. And well, the government doesn't want and doesn't care for us to be translated and be represented in other languages. Therefore, we have no support. We don't have, as I said, independent writers. We're working with independent publishers that are not being supported by the government. So there's very little money going around in that publishing industry. We don't have the government support. Like, you see some countries do that. They have funding. They actually want their represented authors to be translated and be seen in other languages, but we don't have that. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but maybe Armina has some examples of works that have been published.
Sadly, no. I was going to go with all of Zoha's work because that's the only thing that I know, and that's not because Zoha also writes in English, and so sadly I have no recommendations that is translated to any other languages except, again, Zoha's work. So yeah, that's all the thing, because it's hard. I've been trying to find a translator. I've been trying, and also publishing outside Iran works quite differently from what we do in Iran. In Iran is the writer, and then the writer is supposed to deal with everything. You deal with the artist for the cover, you deal with the publication, you deal with the public relation, promotions, marketing, everything. But outside Iran, you gotta have your own agent. The agent basically is the agent is the person who's basically doing all the work. And we are not familiar, Iranian writers are not familiar with that process, with that procedure. So I think it's another challenge for us to kind of get published outside our borders, because we don't know how it works, and the world doesn't know how we work, or if we work, at least if we exist. So all the things that Zoha mentioned, I sadly have zero recommendation, again, except for Zoha's work.
Yeah, I can add, as a publisher, we are still interested in Iranian fantasy. The main problem we discussed with Zoha was the fundings, because it's quite impossible to find fundings. So that's the main, I think, problem into translating from Farsi to Persian to any other language. Because I mean, the translators have to be paid, so the fundings are kind of important, and the books are quite long, so short stories work better to be known abroad than the actual novel. So that's a very true and sad story. But cool. Thank you. I don't know if you want to add something. If you have something to say to the international our public.
It's been a pleasure to be part of this panel. To be perfectly honest, I also learned a lot of things from Zoha's answer, and I'm going to check on whatever references, recommendations that you have. I'm going to check on, who's this author and who's this, what is this book about? But it was great because, again, as you mentioned, we don't get much publicity, as I'm a novel writer, so my books are at least there are 2 books in a series, 3 books in a series, so they cannot reach international field that easily. So it's nice always to kind of get around, chat about fiction, chat about science fiction, chat about Iran. So it was nice. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you, Zoha, as well.
Thank you. It's been really a pleasure. I mean, I think these talks are very important, especially for non-Western and non-English language writers. We don't really get a chance to actually present our work. And I really thank you for this. And thank you, Marta and Armina. It's been a pleasure, being on this panel with all of you.
So
just wanted to thank you again as Ikaya, and of course our beautiful and wonderful writers, and it's been a pleasure for me to be there and to be part of that interview. So thank you all.
So we thank the public as well for following us. You will find the conference online on YouTube and on podcast. We will communicate where exactly when we will know. And I will ask Armina and Zoha to give me some names also to put into the description. So if people want to go and check out writers or their works as well, they will have all the information. And I will see you tomorrow for the Italian fantasy, just fantasy, tomorrow, with Dracones and the publishing house Lumion. So thank you very much for everybody, and see you tomorrow.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.